My approach to astrology is to merge this complex occult science and art with shadow work, but also to understand how astrology relates to esoteric mysticism and astro-theology. I also like to include the Hermetic principles since they rule this universe. Hi, and welcome to Starwell Astrology. My name is Sharrie, and I am a Western tropical astrologer. I also specialize in shadow work. So I'm sharing with you the principle of vibrations first because I want to explain how this relates to astrology in that nothing rests and everything moves, everything vibrates. And this is an attribute of Mars that is always in motion, taking action. But also, more importantly, this is the sun because the sun is always moving. This law of vibration shows that while here on Earth, everything is always moving. There's a vibrational frequency that is always operating behind the scenes, and we are that vibrational frequency. But in order for this reality to manifest, it requires motion, action, and the sun is always in action. Now, I practice tropical astrology, and this is based on the northern hemisphere of the sky. But no matter where we are in the world, the sun stays on the same path, and therefore it is always moving across the sky, following a precise cycle. This cycle or circuit is called a sine wave. So on March 21st, the sun moves into Aries each year, and this marks the spring equinox at 0 degrees Aries. At this point, there is equal daytime and equal nighttime. But from this point on, the sun continues to move above the horizon or equator and is now rising to its highest point in the sky, which will give us longer days and shorter nights. When the sun gets to the Tropic of Cancer, it is now at its highest point in the sky, where it is said that it rests for 3 days. However, it is still in motion and just appearing to stay at the same point for 3 days. And this is called the summer solstice around June 21st of each year, before it begins its decline towards the fall equinox, which the sun is now moving below the equator. And this is what the fall equinox represents in September, around September 21st. So the fall means that the sun falls below the horizon and is moving towards the winter season, where the nights get longer and the days get shorter. On December 21st, an imaginary point called the Tropic of Capricorn at 23 degrees is the point that the sun comes to rest again or appear to rest for 3 days. And this is the lowest point and the weakest point for the sun. The sun is said to die, meaning the sun appears to stop moving for 3 days before it ascends. This is when the sun is said to be crucified on the Southern Cross in the sky before its birth or rebirth on December 25th. Once born or reborn, it ascends to the spring season on March 21st. The sun is said to be resurrected, which is around Passover, which is the sun passing over the horizon. So the sun is a giant clock in the sky, in continuous movement on a sine wave or a circuit. Astro-theology, the sine wave, which is also the circuit in the sky, is referring to the Sea of Galilee. The Sea of Galilee in the Bible is a significant point for Jesus because he is said to have walked on water and he has performed his ministry by the Sea of Galilee. He also recruited his disciples who were fishermen by the Sea of Galilee, and where he also appeared to his disciples after his resurrection was around or near the Sea of Galilee. So this is in astro-theology a common reference to the sun moving on its path. The S-O-N and the S-U-N are synonymous in astro-theology. Astrology is a symbolic representation of the historical Jesus. So in Astro-Theology, it is common knowledge that the sun is referring to Jesus, the Son of God, and the 12 disciples are the 12 signs of the zodiac. The sun's consistent movement through time dictates the cycles of life through the ages and centuries, decades, years, months, weeks, days, hours, minutes, all the way down to seconds. The sun in the sky, it puts a spotlight on whatever area of the sky it is moving through. So it is needless to say that the sun plays the most important role in the sky. The sun is seen as a blessing because it is abundant in his resources and does not discriminate in what or where he shines his light. The sun's light is available for all of us. On a personal level, the sun is the soul, aligned in spirit, which is our own abundant inner resource and power to live and love unconditionally. The oneness of everything is expressed through the sun as the consciousness, which is our unique identity as an individual person. The sun shines through us and within us and is our inner source and resource, but also it provides the force and motivation needed to survive in our daily lives. And we project our reality through our sun sign into the third dimension or holographic simulation to experience a personal reality. The sun is our inner alchemical sovereignty, a birthright and godlike power that keeps each of us interconnected as oneness or pure consciousness, but also allows us to experience ourselves as individual expressions of spirit through a soul or individual self. In my opinion, we experience reality as an omnicentric universal consciousness that materializes everywhere equally and simultaneously in the now moment. But each point has a center or personal solar point in consciousness that gets experienced individually as a soul or self while being interdependent on the whole. That statement takes a lot of unpacking, but what I'm pretty much saying is that everything exists now, simultaneously, everywhere all at once. But we each experience this now moment from our personal perspective based on us being individuals or experiencing this oneness as an individual self. But we are still interdependent on the whole. From this oneness, we feel separated as an individual self, but we cannot exist without the oneness being at the core of our sense of self. So we are here to learn from our environment through our relationships about ourselves. And as we learn about ourselves and become more conscious as human beings, this affects us on a collective level. Because if we know that our reality is being experienced from our perspective, by healing ourselves, we are healing ourselves at a collective level. We can explore and experience our daily lives through our alignment with our sun. And it is where we have the free will to do so. In Astro-Theology, this relates to us all being sons of God. The sun being the primary source of light, just as it represents our life force within us, the sun in astrology rules the sign of Leo. Leo and the sun rules the heart, the main organ that pumps blood through our body to keep us alive. The heart is also our most vital organ for many reasons, such as it is where we know unconditional love and peace. We sense this in our heart. The focus is always on the sun because it shows us the rhythm of the seasons and the cycles. We need this in order to know when to plant, when to harvest. And it has been significant to us throughout time. But from an astrological point of view, it is essential that we know who we are at the core of our essence, and this is represented in our sun sign. Now, the Hermetic principle of rhythm states that everything flows out and in, everything has its tides, all things rise and fall. This is representing the cycle of the sun. It is always ebbing and flowing. The sun is reborn or resurrected at the spring equinox on March 21st, and this is our spiritual new year. January is a secular new year. But from a spiritual perspective, our new year begins when the sun enters Aries, and that always represents new beginnings. It's the portal for us to work on our inner alchemy. So in the spring, the sun moves through the sign of Aries, and Aries is the first sign of the zodiac. It represents new beginnings. The sun in astrology is exalted in Aries, meaning that the sun has a lot of strength in Aries because it is reborn and resurrected in its purest essence after being in the underworld or below the horizon for the past 6 months under the rulership of Saturn. And from a mythological and esoteric perspective, Saturn is represented as Satan, who tempts us in this material world. Check out my previous video on Saturn to learn more. We are born into our sun sign as pure consciousness, and Mars is the impulse for life that allows us to survive as a soul or a self or I am presence. Mars is action, and the instinctive impulse of life comes from the energy of Mars. But the sun, who is exalted in the sign of Aries, is also essential, and it represents our vitality, our self-expression, our motivation, and our life force. Mars rules our independence as an individual, but so does the sun. The sun and Mars both represent our unique and independent self as a person. Both the sun and Mars are masculine fire energies. Now, let's keep in mind that the zodiacal wheel represents the body, the mind, and the soul. The natal chart is a map of oneself, starting with Aries. Aries is the first sign of the zodiac where everything begins. At the spring equinox, the sun, S-U-N, and the sun, S-O-N, begins the spiritual new year. And the sun ascends to its highest point in the sky after its resurrection at Passover. The highest point in the body is the brain, and Mars rules the cerebrum, which is the largest part of the brain. In esotericism, the sun is Christ, but it's also the sacred secretion in the body called Christos, or the Christ seed. By living a virtuous life, the sacred secretion called Christos gets raised up the spine, which is Jacob's ladder or the River Jordan, to the third ventricle in the brain, which is the tomb or the cave in Astro-Theology. So just as the sun ascends in the sky, which is the S-U-N, so does the S-O-N, which is the Christ seed within us, raise up our spinal column into the brain. But this only happens if we're living in alignment with spirit. Otherwise, this sacred secretion is squandered through our vices. Now, I don't want to get too much into the sacred secretion or the Christ seed as of yet, because it would make this video too long. But this alchemy that exists within all of us is one of the most important things in esotericism and astrotheology. The Bible is also riddled with its symbolism in its allegorical stories. Every allegorical story in the Bible is symbolizing this alchemical process, which is an anatomical ascension activation in the body. There's a possibility for this potential to begin in us. Now, this is called the Kundalini awakening, and although some have forced this process and have suffered terribly from it, it's best that this is done through grace and only when the soul is ready for it. However, anything that we do that helps us to evolve at a soul level is giving access to this higher potential in all of us. Now, the third ventricle in the brain is called the Holy of Holies. It is also the Ark of the Covenant, the tent, the land of milk and honey. It's Solomon's temple. There are many references to this in the allegorical stories in the Bible. And because, and this is so because it is the most important thing for our attainment while here on earth. And I shouldn't say attainment because then it seems that I'm saying that we need to pursue it but that's not possible because then our ego is going to try to pursue something that we might not be ready for at a soul level. So our best option is to make the highest choices. And if that potential is then available to us through grace, then this could happen naturally. Now, going back to the astrology and esoteric mysticism and astrotheology, Mars is the ruler of Aries, the first sign of the zodiac, and is masculine cardinal fire. The masculine cardinal fiery energy is essential for action. In astrotheology, Mars is Adam. Adama in Hebrew means red earth, and Adam in etymology means man or human, the one formed from the earth. Mars symbolically represents Adam or man. Adam was made from the dust or clay or red earth, as stated in Genesis 2:7. And in astrotheology and esoteric mysticism, Adam means atom, which is the building block of life. Our cells consist of atoms, red blood cells or DNA. Everything starts with the atom. So atom, Adam, man are the creation story of Genesis. Man in etymology means mind, and this is the first Hermetic principle that states the all is mind and the universe is mental. So, how does all of this relate to us directly? We are the sun and the source of life. Therefore, we are all sons of God. The sun is our godlike divine sovereignty because, like the sun, we are consciousness and therefore the source of life here at a physical level called Earth. We are appearing in a physical body that exists through the perception of our mind. We are the source of our reality, reflected through our mind, manifesting what is perceived to be other than us, which appears to be an external world. We get to play all the parts in this very important game called life. This is a dramatic game of hide and seek where we are meant to seek our souls, but we have amnesia and therefore forget and therefore focus on seeking external things that distract us from our real mission as a soul. To live in this reality, we must do what is necessary to survive, but we are also here to have an abundant life that is full of joy and love. But to do this genuinely, we have to become conscious and aware of who we are as an authentic self. Mars at the most basic level is our survival instincts, but it also gives us the drive to take action, to reach for our desires. However, we reach for our lower desires through Venus. We reach for our lower desires of lust and greed instead of staying centered in our higher desires of love and peace. Venus represents our emotional desires. She is our feminine counterpart. She is passive, fixed earth energy that grounds us into this physical reality. While Mars represents the I am presence and consciousness, Venus represents what we feel. The body is active through its sense desires. The five primal senses are sight, hearing, smell, taste, and touch. They become activated through Venus, who is also Eve, who succumbs to temptation and ate the fruit from the tree of knowledge in the Garden of Eden. The Garden of Eden is the body, and the tree of knowledge of good and evil is our dual nature. In astrotheology, the physical body is ruled by the sign Taurus and the planet Venus, who is also Eve. The self or soul exists in a body. The serpent in the tree is the nervous system. It's a bundle of nerves that runs through the spinal column that extends from the brain. The nervous system allows us to respond to stimuli, but this keeps us in our temptations, where we experience the sensations in the body through the duality of pleasure or pain. Venus, or Eve, rules our emotional connection to life. She's our feeling nature that feeds our carnal desires through our five senses, activated by the nervous system. Interestingly, since our reality is dominated by our thoughts and actions, with very little room for our feelings, Eve is manifested as the suppressed feminine energy. She is the harlot or the virgin, which is our vices and our virtues. We're tempted to feed our vices because it brings us instant gratifications, but she has virtues that can be developed instead. Venus and Eve are seen as the temptress of our pleasure principles. So Adam and Eve, or Mars, which is the masculine energy, and Venus, which is the feminine archetype, is represented in all humans. This is the Hermetic principle of gender. Gender is in everything. Everything has its masculine and feminine principles. So Eve's sins produce the principles of polarities that show us our dual nature through Gemini. Gemini is the representation of duality. Principle of polarity says that everything is dual. Everything has poles. Everything has a pair of opposites. Like and unlike are the same. Now, Gemini is the third sign of the zodiac ruled by Mercury. Mercury is the mind. It represents how we think. Mercury helps us to become conscious through our mind. Mercury is how we communicate and therefore rules our communication and how we use language to share our thoughts and feelings. Mercury is represented by I think. The first Hermetic principle dictates that the all is mind and the universe is mental. So Mercury plays a significant role in this reality because we have a conscious mind that allows us to exist as a unique individual through a body-mind identity. Mercury rules the mind. It also rules the nervous system, which gets activated through Venus. Mercury rules the mind. The mind has two parts. There's a lower mind and there is the higher mind. The lower mind is programmed through systems of beliefs that divide us, and the lower mind is the conditioned mind that shapes the ego identity. Mercury is a masculine, mutable, mental air sign. It is mutable energy that is adaptable, therefore not very stable. So it can go back and forth between two ideas, two choices, two positions. And this dual sign is represented by the twins in the Bible, starting with Cain and Abel. They are the lower and higher mind. The lower mind is the masculine dominant left brain, and the left brain is the intellectual mind that stores our conditioned thought processes. In the Bible, story of Cain and Abel, Cain is the dominant lower mind where we do all our inner battles with the ego desire to rule over our higher mind, which is our pure self or who we are at a soul level. So Cain is forever killing Abel. Cain wants division and Abel wants union. The inner battle is to find the balance between our dual nature. We must find the middle path back to ourselves. When we're working with our personal will, Mars, to know our pure desires, we must overcome our vices and align in our virtues, Venus. We get access to a balanced mind, Mercury, through our even-mindedness that helps us to raise our level of consciousness. So Mars, Venus, Mercury are personal planets, and they show us how we act, Mars, how we feel, Venus, and how we think, Mercury. Mars is the I am presence that has personal will, and Venus is I feel. Therefore, we have the choice between good and evil, our vices over our virtues. And Mercury, which is I think, is the dual mind that can find the balance that unites the brothers, Cain and Abel. They can exist together and work in union for our highest good. These planets rule the first three signs in the zodiac, which is Aries, Taurus, and Gemini. Get to know them in your natal chart. Since these three planets play an important role in our lives, they represent the mind, the heart, and our will. Therefore, they show us how we operate in our day-to-day lives. To practice self-witnessing begins with noticing what we're thinking, feeling, and doing. Once we are aware of our thoughts, feelings, and actions, by acknowledging all the hidden dynamics in ourselves, we can make conscious choices instead of allowing Cain to kill Abel. When we are aware that there's a constant battle taking place within us, the awareness of this is crucial for our awakening to our higher self. It is not possible to make a conscious choice from an unconscious mind. Most of us are living this way, although we don't want to admit it. If you want to awaken to your higher self, then do the self-witnessing practice. It's the first real and practical step that you can take to make the unconscious conscious. It takes no time, just to be present, because we're always here in the now. Your awareness of the present moment allows you to see yourself in action. When you can notice yourself in action, you're able to get to know yourself and to know yourself more authentically. So thank you for joining me. I appreciate your support. Please subscribe if you have not already. And also, if you enjoyed this video, hit the like button. It does help my channel to grow. And also, I offer natal chart readings and one-on-one shadow work. My information is below. Again, thank you and goodbye.